Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. I'm excited to be here with you again this week, talking about something that came up in a session with a client just a week ago, actually. And it was just like a ding, 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 just a little peek behind the curtain. This is a mini confession for you. It's not my real confession for today, but I'll give you a little like amuse-bouche confession. Most of the topics that I come up with for my podcast episodes or for my emails, my blog posts, like all those things, they all come from like a moment in client sessions where I'm like, ooh, this is like the third time I've talked about this today. I bet you people would really benefit from hearing about this. So that is exactly what's happened with today's topic. And I named this episode Connection is King. And that's literally the words that came out of my mouth when I was talking to a client just last week. And what I mean by that, you will see as our episode unfolds. But I got to start with this confession. And I bet other people have this same experience that I had. So back a million gajillion years ago, when my first kid was just like in preschool and we would have like parent teacher conferences, I would go in, and it happened to me so many times in those early days where I would sit down with the teacher and the teacher would just talk about like what a lovely, well behaved, like thoughtful, kind, caring person my son was, and that he got along with all the kids. He listened every time the teacher, gave any instruction, was just, very like alert and paying attention and following the rules and, all this stuff, like a very, very well behaved, lovely student. And I would just sit there and look at this teacher and be like, I don't know whose kids you're talking about, but it definitely ain't mine. Because that was not my experience of Elijah at home. At home, he was this like wild, untamable beast. He was like climbing all over everything. He didn't listen. He seemed like he just had like a death wish. Like all the like quote unquote naughty stuff that he did was like all stuff that would kill him, like hurtling towards like the brick hearth in front of our fireplace, or like just eating like every single piece of poop he could find at the playground because there's geese everywhere in Colorado. And, it was just like all I was doing all day long was like chasing after this kid and saying no and, trying to like teach him not to do all these things. And, he definitely would do that like toddler thing of like looking at me while he did the thing that I just told him not to do. And, just being like, watch this, lady, or like, what are you going to do about this? What I'm going to do right now. And I was just completely frustrated and mystified. I would find myself kind of vilifying him in my mind. Like he was bad. He was like this naughty, out of control kid. And I was really just so angry with him and had no clue on like how to get him to, change his behavior or listen to me or any of that stuff. And obviously, things have changed. I thank God, just randomly somebody gave my husband this it was like a CD back in the day. Remember CDs? It was a CD of Love and Logic training, like dealing with toddlers. And I always say like that was like the only proactive thing my husband has ever done about child rearing, was like he's the one who brought Love and Logic into our family, because he was talking about, how challenging it was to deal with Elijah when he was like 2 or 3 years old. And somebody was like, I had the same thing. Let me give you this CD. And that set the course for like our entire lives. And I figured out all the stuff that I needed to do with Elijah and my future kids. And I started learning about authoritative parenting. And then I started doing my own personal work so I could actually do authoritative parenting. And Yada, yada, yada. You guys know that was like got the ball rolling. But today's podcast episode isn't necessarily all about love and logic and authoritative parenting at all. It's about why my kid was so well behaved at school and such a crazy wild child at home. And there are lots of reasons why kids are like this. Today's episode is going to be about one, and in my opinion, the most important one of those reasons. So a lot of times you'll hear stuff about like, oh, kids give us their worst because they feel the most comfortable with us. And when they're at school, they have to like kind of control themselves and, keep themselves on track. And then when they get home, they get to relax and just let it all, hang out. Well, that is true. But that's not actually, in my opinion, the real reason why kids, or the biggest reason why kids are different at school than they are at home, at least not most kids. So, the real reason, in my opinion, is the title of this podcast episode: Connection is King. And to illustrate what I mean by that, I'm going to share this story that came up in a client session last week that really illustrates this point so well. So this couple that I'm working with, they have started to notice that when they're in the room, their kids just seem to like have way more meltdowns. Their meltdowns last longer. Like everything is just like this sort of chaotic, dumpster fire. And in the past, what they have done to try to mitigate that is really get involved in whatever dumpster fire it is. The kids are like scrambling to get their lunches ready for school, or they're, going crazy because they hate the dinner that was served to them, or, whatever it is. Parents would get involved and try to just, pour some fire extinguisher on that dumpster fire. But that really just never worked. It just felt like the entire family was just getting more and more intense, and everything was like spiraling out of control until it was like this blazing inferno. And since working with me, they've been experimenting more with just walking away when things are getting crazy and kids are melting down, just basically saying, okay, everything's a little bit wild right now. I'm going to take some space. I'm going to give you some space, and let's just see what happens. And it almost always resolves things, and the kids really get themselves back on track and start taking care of what they need to take care of. And they just kind of like put on their big kid pants and engage in this situation in a very different way. And you know uh dad was telling me in this coaching session, like, it's so weird. Like, as soon as I walk in the room, it's all worse. And as soon as I leave, it gets better. Like, what is up with that? And I feel guilty just like kind of staying in my room while I listen to everything just be, crazy outside, and I'm not helping and stuff like that. And we had a really great conversation about, well, why is it worse when you come in and better when you leave? And the ultimate answer is connection is king, meaning that as soon as an opportunity to connect with parents enters into on the scene, that is going to um, overpower anything else that's going on in that situation. And we can actually use that in a beautiful way, instead of what's going on in this family right now, which is exactly what needs to be going on in this family right now. They're doing an amazing job. But eventually we would love to get to a place where me being in the room is actually helpful, not hurtful or not problematic. And the way we do that is by leaning into that whole connection is king. So let me back up. I'm going to kind of build this layer cake for you. And the first foundational layer is all people, not just kids, crave attention, energy, interest, connection, interaction from the people around us. We all have you've heard me talk before in terms of like the Enneagram instincts. If you listen to this podcast, I think I've done actually 2 episodes on the instincts. So one of those primal instincts that we all have is the social instinct. It's the instinct that tells us that we need to belong to a healthy, functioning collective in order to survive. Um, And we all have a self-preservation instinct. That's the instinct that tells us like we need like our, basic survival needs met in order to survive. Well, with kids, both of those instincts come on in a really big way when it comes to the family and the parent child relationship. Because for especially young children or babies, the parent child relationship, that's not a social thing. That's a self preservation thing. Like without an adult and without a caretaker or a care provider taking care of a baby, the baby will not survive. And so making sure that a child feels that parent child connection, whatever that parent is, doesn't actually have to be a biological parent, doesn't have to be, could be a grandparent or whatever. But in order to feel that connection, that child will do anything it can to feel that connection, to remind its system that like this person is still like caring about me and connected and attached to me, and I'm attached to them. And so that's a self-preservation thing. And then as children get older, their social instinct comes online too. And so now we also have things about belonging in the family and maybe the social aspect of one-on-one relationships, and especially that parent-child relationship. So that connection piece is like survival 101 to babies, and it doesn't really ever leave us that it's survival 101. This is why even as adults we might have really tumultuous or strained or intense relationships with our parents, and why we might be able to like do so much amazing personal growth work and grow in such beautiful ways in other areas of our lives and still have like unresolved stuff with our parents, right? That parent child relationship, that need for connection over superseding everything else, that never really goes away. So, when things have gotten to a point in a parent child relationship where most of the energy, intensity, emotion, attention that a kiddo is getting from their parent comes when their parent is upset with them or stressed or worried or taking over and oh my gosh, the word just left my head. Taking over, maybe like bulldozering or stuff like that. If that's where this child has learned that they can get energy, intensity, attention, connection from their parent, that is the thing that they are going to use anytime their system really feels that need for connection. And in children, they feel that need for connection a lot until they're maybe like, I don't know, in their teens, right? When they have both the need for connection with you and the need for disconnection with you. And then we get into all crazy adolescent stuff. We don't need to talk about that today. So think about this. A couple of weeks ago, I did this podcast episode about being versus doing in parenting. And well, today's episode is such a great segue from that because if we're in this do mode, if we're in this mode where we have an agenda with our kids and we have to get you out to the bus stop on time, or we need to get your lunch packed, or you need to eat this dinner, or you need to do your homework, or you need to stop messing around with your sibling or whatever, that's the doing that we're bringing to our parenting. And that's the way that our child starts to understand that they can feel connection with us. Now, of course, none of this is happening consciously on the part of the child or on the part of the parent, right? The child isn't thinking like, oh, I have a primal need for connection. And when I throw a fit, I get a lot of intensity from my parent. So I think I'll throw a fit right now. This is not a conscious choice that this child is making. It's just something that subconsciously their entire system has learned is a way to scratch that itch. And also, the parent isn't intentionally saying, I'm only going to give connection and intensity to my child around the things that I want to control. And I am like, don't feel good to me, or don't feel like they're where they need to be to me. And then if things are going well, I'm just going to kind of like check out. No parent consciously makes that decision. And that behavior on the part of the parent is coming from their internal system, right? It's coming from their system's need for things to go a certain way, for them to feel okay in the world. And frankly, it probably is coming from lessons that they learned when they were having, unhealthy connection with their parents when they were kids, right? So of course, we also have kids that learn, oh, the way that I get intensity, energy, connection, and attention from my parent is by being perfect and following the rules. Because every time I do that, I get praise and my parent acts like they love me. So I'm gonna just never let myself make a mistake and be this like people pleaser, right? All of these lessons are lessons that are being learned by our kids accidentally, and they're being taught to our kids accidentally. So now we can fast forward to this moment where getting ready for school, it's kind of a kids maybe freaking out. Oh no, I have to be ready in 5 minutes and I have to make my lunch or whatever it is. Parent comes in the room, and this kiddo has learned that, oh, this is a really great way for us to have like this intense connected interaction with each other. We'll both freak out about my lunchbox. So I'm going to freak out about the lunchbox even more, because then that's going to get my parent to freak out about the lunchbox. And then we're going to have this really deeply satisfying shared freak out about the lunchbox. And now that's how I'm going to scratch my itch for energy, intensity, connection, and attention. Well, it makes perfect sense that every time dad comes in the room, lunchbox freak out gets worse. And every time dad leaves the room, lunchbox freak out gets better, because connection, this like opportunity for connection that has been established in an unhealthy way, this opportunity for connection supersedes lunchbox. It supersedes getting to the bus on time. It supersedes everything. Connection is king. So, how can we take this from being a downward spiral to an upward spiral? That is the $1 million question. Um, and the way that we do that is by having, obviously, you're probably already making this conclusion in your mind, healthy connection, right? So we need to give lots of neutrality and calmness and absolute just, non-attachment around those things that normally we would freak out about, right? So lunchbox being made or not made, no big deal. I love you no matter what. Maybe you'll get it ready on time, maybe you won't. And maybe that experience will be something that helps you make different choices in the future. Maybe it won't. Like, I'm neutral about this. I actually don't care at all about your lunchbox. And in a crazy way, I don't even care if you eat lunch today or not, because it's your body and it's your choice. And I love you even if you decide to, go hungry during lunch this week. Right. So super, super neutral about that. Super, super intense, lots of attention, lots of connection, lots of energy around my love for you, not my need for you to do stuff or be away, but just you. You are already enough. I love you because you're you. I don't need you to be different. I don't need you to change. I don't need anything to happen from this moment. I just love you. So I can be in this moment connected to you and disconnected to this thing that is freaking you out. Getting to that place where, dude, I love you no matter what. I love you if you make lunch. I love you if you don't make lunch. I love you if I have to drive you to school because you're late. I love you if I don't have to drive you to school and you're on time. Like, all of those things, that's the love there. So me being in the room with you isn't actually hurting this situation. It's actually helping the situation, because I can just be a loving, calm presence sitting on the couch, maybe even sipping my coffee, smiling at you, loving you, believing in you, while you either finish making your lunch or don't finish making your lunch. And that calm, connected presence in the room is helpful, because part of what's happening inside of a kid isn't just connection is king, although connection is king. It will be the the thing that supersedes everything else. But also needing to know that I'm still a good person when I'm making mistakes, like all the other things that are swirling around inside a kid's head, right? Like, what if I don't get it in done on time? Everyone's going to hate me. My mom might be mad at me, but it might not be about parents at all. I'm going to look like a loser at lunch today because I don't have one. Maybe my teacher's going to say something. Maybe I'll just feel mad at myself because I'm hungry. Like all of these things are going on inside this kiddo's head. And having a loving, calm parent sitting in the room with them, being like, maybe all those things will happen and maybe that doesn't matter because you're pretty amazing, is kind of amazing. It's kind of a beautiful thing. And I'm going to leave you with one more story to maybe help this like concept marinate for you. And it is something that I learned way, 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 way back in time when I was a birth doula. Maybe you don't know that. I used to be a birth doula. I have had so many careers, everybody. I used to be an engineer. Did you know that? I have a master's degree from the Colorado School of Mines in engineering. So I used to be an engineer. Then I became a birth doula. Then I became a child educator. Then I transitioned into parent work, coaching, and now I coach everybody on everything. But back when I was getting my training to be a doula, one of the things that they told us was this like amazing study that had been done back a long time ago in I think in the Netherlands, um, where they had people that were coming into the hospital to have their baby randomly assigned to three different groups. One group, no change. They went and had their babies, nothing. One group got a doula, but the doula didn't do anything. The doula just sat in the room with them. It was just like someone in the corner of the room while they had their baby. And then the third group had a doula who was like actively participating in helping out with the birth. And the biggest difference they saw was between the group that had nothing and the group that had the doula just sitting in the room doing nothing. And what they learned from that is how important it is to our nervous system, like something maybe we can't even fully explain yet or understand yet. Just having a calm presence in the room, not being alone, just having somebody be there made a huge measurable difference on the birth outcomes for that those groups of women. So differences in the length of their labor, in their need for intervention, their perception of their labor, everything was different just because there was somebody in the room with them. So your calm, loving presence in the room while your kid is struggling can be a really beautiful thing. And if you go back, gosh, I can't even remember now. A long time ago, I did an episode on co-regulation, and that really speaks to this topic too, as well. Now, a caveat before I say goodbye. A lot of people take the idea of co-regulation or the fact that your calm, neutral presence can be helpful to your children in some situations to mean you should never give your kids space. You should never take space, and you should definitely never need space, because if you were calm and loving, being around your child would be facilitating everything and greasing the wheels, and you wouldn't need to take space because you would be feeling calm and loving. Please do not weaponize this information that you get from me on this podcast. And that goes for anything you've ever heard from me on this podcast. Most parents have a tendency to take this information and sort of weaponize it and use it against themselves to make themselves feel like there's something wrong with them because they don't feel calm and neutral, or they can't stay in that space all of the time. Right now for this family that I'm talking about, parents leaving the room is the best possible thing because parents aren't feeling calm and neutral, and adding stress and anxiety to a situation is not helpful. It's counterproductive. So them leaving the room is the most helpful thing that they could do. And as they do their own personal work, they're going to find more and more and more access to what IFS calls self energy, that calm, neutral, loving, compassionate presence. And the more access they have to that, the more that their presence with their children in stressful moments will be helpful, the more ability that they'll have to stay in that space. And also, it's never going to be infinite. It's never going to be 100%. There will always be times where you can feel yourself getting stirred up and realize, like, you know what, I need to step away from this situation because I'm not being helpful right now. And I'm probably just making this situation harder for my child. I have been doing this work for a very long time, and I spend a lot of my time, way more than most people, doing this work every week, every day, because it's my job. And I still need to leave the room many, many times with my family. It happens to me all the time, and it will continue to happen to me until I am in the grave. And that's the truth for all of us. So this does not mean that if you need to leave if you need to leave the room when your child is, stirred up, that you are a bad parent, or that you haven't done enough work yet, or that if you had done enough work, you wouldn't need to leave the room. That's not what this is about. This is about understanding what's truly going on internally for you and in between you and your child, and realizing that there is hope for change there. And that also the way that it is right now is something that can only change once we have full acceptance and, once again, neutrality toward the way that it is right now, so that we can engage with the way that it is right now, just like this family is doing. This family is finally being able to accept, like, the person I am right now is a person who needs to leave the room to help things move forward. That's the person I am right now. And I'm okay with that, at least to the point where I can actually do it instead of fight it. And I can also work on becoming even more and more of a self-led parent, more and more of somebody who can be helpful in my presence. So I hope that's helpful for everybody. I hope you start to see these like little connections between being versus doing, between what's going on internally for you and how you're showing up externally. All these things. This is what I do. This is my job. I use all these different modalities that I talk to you about on the podcast. Sometimes we use internal family systems. Sometimes we use the Enneagram. Sometimes we use just love and logic, like I did back in the day. Sometimes we use just teaching and learning, and we spend our whole session with me just teaching you stuff about authoritative parenting and different parenting skills. Like, whatever is needed for the moment, we can use all of these skills. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what it's about is this raising your consciousness, becoming this aware parent who's showing up in authenticity for your child, so that that connection can remain intact in a healthy way. And everything else flows from there. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long, or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.